Tonight on the Bigfooty podcast, we talk all things Brisbane, Michael Voss and Fitzroy with Western Roy Boys. Chief gives us plenty of advice on how not to watch the AFL, and we introduce you to Messenger of the Thousand Voices. All this and more, coming right up.
Hola, Mr. Tank.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Big Footy podcast. I am the Wookie. With me tonight are a number of highly esteemed gentlemen and Messenger, and we're going to introduce them all now. Say good evening to Chief.
I'm horny and nauseous.
and the old Dark Navies.
I've been ambushed.
And the prosecutor is here.
Hello, my fellow aminos.
He might wish he was elsewhere. And Jamie Johnston is here tonight.
Hello, everybody.
And overtly cheerful for no really good reason. Messenger is here.
Hola, Mr. Tank.
and joining us for the first time this season is Western Roy Boys.
Greetings, gents. It's not a lie if you truly believe it.
So,
even a little.
Cheers, George. Cheers, George.
Wielding the big bat on his first innings. That's what you like to see. Now, Western Roy Boys is here, of course, to talk to us about all things developing at Brisbane and also to have a bit of a reminisce about Fitzroy. As we and then later on, we'll be talking, of course, about Essendon because, let's face it, it's inevitable. Guys, before we do that, though, your highlights and, basically your memorable moment, whether it's a highlight or a lowlight from the weekend. And perhaps we'll start with the new boy on the block. Western Roy Boys, what was your highlight from the weekend, mate?
Ooh, I didn't have a highlight, to be honest.
That's okay, that happens. Prosecutor hasn't had many lately either.
It's
been a bit of a dry run.
The low light was definitely the incumbent chairman of the Brisbane Lions joining in the singing of the club song after the match, which is against protocol. And it's probably the last time he'll join in that song.
Oh,
not a fan of Angus?
No, not a fan. But we'll get to that later.
Seems many people aren't. And the prosecutor, did you have any highlights from the weekend?
I did, and I feel a bit dirty for saying it, but Nick Graham finally got a game.
He did.
And he did reasonably well in the time he had. And when I'm relishing in a Carlton player doing well, I am getting very, very desperate.
He might do very well this weekend as well, if all goes according to plan. And Jamie Johnston, you have any highlights from the weekend that don't involve Essendon?
No. However, I do have two involving Essendon. Watching them melt down on field on Saturday and watching them melt down off field on Wednesday.
Nice little bookend there if you can get it. The old Dark Navies, your highlights from the weekend?
Oh, yeah, let's keep it football-related for a change. Blues having a win over Richmond on the weekend. It was full of merit, won us some credibility back. And the Dogs won yet again, showing that our loss to them maybe wasn't as bad as it seemed.
Taking on the North persona.
Yeah, suddenly I lost us.
And Messenger, your highlights from the weekend?
I must say I really enjoyed Friday night. It was a very good game of football, although to listen to the media talk about it, you'd think Collingwood had actually won the bloody game. It's funny, it's been 17-3 and still been flying under the radar. But anyway.
Okay, and Chief, do you actually have any highlights? Did you do anything football related, or were you going to go on some mystical journey?
Weekend, and I slept through the Richmond Carlton match. Woke up and I thought, watch it on the iPad. And don't do that, kids. Don't watch it on the iPad. It's shit. The pitch is shit. It breaks up. You lose it. But I got the fourth quarter there of the Carlton-Richmond match. It was good. Good feeling, even though I already knew the result. But
We are the boys from old Fitzroy. We wear the colors maroon and blue. We will always fight for victory, and we'll always see it through. Win or lose, we do or die. In defeat, we'll always try. Fitzroy, Fitzroy, the club we hold so dear. Premiers will be this year.
So we're going to talk to Western Roy boys now about developments in Brisbane and how they're travelling and what's going on with Michael Voss. Western Roy boys, how are Brisbane travelling in your opinion this season?
Oh, on field, I think they've done a pretty good job. I mean, you've got to have a look at the list, where they've been, where they've come from. So last year we got 10 wins. I thought that was a really fair effort. We had a pretty ordinary draw, even though everything's on a high after the NAB Cup and people are pumping up and saying we're going to play finals. Well, personally, I never held that belief, and I thought if we could match what we did last year and our playing group improved, which I think they have, then I reckon we've had a reasonable year. We've got two of our greatest champions are on the way out. I think they've both played their last games, and we lack key forwards. The fact that we've gone and recruited Stephen Martin probably just highlights what I suppose what a hole we're in. We had a good go at Tippett 2 years ago. We almost pulled that off. The Crows managed to talk him out of that. We know now how they did that. And key forwards are what is going to hold us back. But I thought we've done a great job. Not everyone on the Brisbane board, and I mean the Bigfooty board, was 100% about whether we should keep Voss or not. I'd say it was 75 keep, probably 25 against. But obviously Angus Johnson and his board believed otherwise, and now we are in an absolute parlous state, both on and off the field. We're in a worse financial predicament than Melbourne. People don't seem to realise that, but I can give you the tip, we are.
Wow.
Alrighty.
Okay, questions, guys?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in first. I guess start off with the obvious one. How grateful are you for Essendon and their proverbial hole of shit that's been lately? Because it just seems like the last week or so has just been utter chaos at Brisbane, and it doesn't seem like there's been any clear direction.
Yeah, look, I said this earlier. The only people that are grateful for this are Angus Johnson and the board, and whether he's tried to do some of this covert, I don't think they're clever enough to do that. But Brisbane is in absolute turmoil. The supporters of the club actually need the spotlight to be turned on there, just to highlight to everyone outside of, a few around the club and a few members that have sort of been questioning what's going on, just how parlous a state the club is in. So the board are probably thinking, fantastic, the Essendon stuff's blown up, and our story's about 4 pages in when we've sacked the golden-haired boy of the club. Now, eventually one day Voss was going to get the arse. Every coach does, but he had to be treated in a lot better fashion than what he was. And then, to have a botched attempt at getting Paul Roos, we don't even know how far that is. Angus Johnson's sort of his media stuff today, he seems to claim that he's closer to getting Roos, but everyone else would tell you that's a bucket full of crap.
Can I ask putting aside Michael Voss's playing legacy at Brisbane, what do you believe his coaching legacy will be there?
Look, I'm of the belief that Voss's best coaching is still ahead of him. Some people will tag him with the old crazy Vossy of the 2009 10, mad recruiting where we recruited for Vola and Staker and Rains and pissed off Bradshaw and lost Riscatelli in the process. But you've got to take all that into consideration. I personally, at the time, didn't blame him for that because, you don't have a long time as a head coach as a rule, and they thought they were a chance albeit idiotically, of perhaps pinching a flag. So they went with the all-in philosophy. I personally don't have a problem with that. Since that time, and when the wheels did fall off, they brought in John Reid from Adelaide. They redesigned the footy department, and then we went back to basics. And over the last 2 years, we've seen constant improvement. You can't say that the players weren't playing for him. We've heard a few rumours floating around that, it was a player-driven revolt. That is absolute crap. Our younger blokes were on the improve. They're starting to play good footy. Look around. If they could have got Roos and they had done it in a Fremantle fashion, I still wouldn't have agreed with it, but I probably would have accepted it. But it's just shambolic what's going on, and we're in freefall now.
Did Vossi sort of up the ante a little bit and demand some feedback on where his future laid with the club at the time, or was it a bit of a cynical exercise, sacking him 3 games out, knowing that they were probably going to win their next 2? Because it would have been a lot worse if they won their next 2 games, and he sort of ended the season with the 10 wins again.
Yeah, look, it's pretty hard to know what's fact and fiction. The press conference was the only person who came out of it with class was Voss, and whether you like him or not, he's a pretty classy performer. Since that time, though, he's basically tipped a bucket of shit on Angus Johnson's statements that he was kept informed of the process and he knew what was going on. So Alistair Lynch has indicated a couple of weeks ago, it's probably 3 weeks ago now, that the word went round that Voss wasn't going to get reappointed. And at that stage, Voss had told people close to him that, there was a chance he might get tipped out. And one of those was Mark Harvey, who then got straight on the phone to West Coast and said, hey, boys, is anything going there next year? And John Brown also knew pretty much what was going on. So, I think they've completely botched it up. There's allegedly a set of KPIs they were measuring against, but I'm not sure Voss knows what they are, and certainly no one else knows them outside of the board, which lacks any football nous apart from the chairman who played a few games at Norwood and Southport.
Yeah, I guess another issue, just to finally wrap up the board stuff, I guess. The paddle pop line has been an issue of late for Brisbane supporters. Now, I noticed there was a petition going around earlier on, and that it's Angus Johnson, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I keep getting mixed up with Angus Graham, who appeared last night on 360. But in any case, that Johnson was claiming that the response was minimal and they weren't really consulting with the board. Just how much of an issue is the paddle pop line to the traditional Brisbane Lion and even the Fitzroy supporters, I guess? And what do the majority really want done with it?
Look, I think there's 2 points there. One is there are a group of people, and if I was doing percentages, I'd say there's probably 25% of all supporters actually like the paddle pop, and it's probably 75 against. Now, we've all got different reasons. I am obviously Western Roy boy. I am a Fitzroy person. The part of the reason of me following Brisbane was because of that line on the jumper. Now, that might sound stupid, but given the shafting that went on with Fitzroy, and I was agnostic for a year, I'm happy to put my hand up, that line actually means a fair bit to me. That might sound stupid. The issue with the board over the paddle pop line is not whether it changed or it is whether it changed. It's the lack of consultation. There's a group that's formed largely based of Bigfooty posters called the Lions Roar. And they've started, I suppose, a social media campaign to at least have the board put to a vote what the jumper should be. Now, the low point for everyone there, and I think where the board really underestimated their impact, was the Collingwood game that was on a Friday night where we played deplorably. They actually had people handing out flyers for the Lions Royal Group, and they're actually evicted off the Gabba after having received permission to hand out flyers. And since then, Angus Johnson has sort of, in the media, I suppose, underplayed the amount of letters and emails that they've received saying, he received 12 and most of them were positive for the paddle pop. Well, I can guarantee you that's crap. Most of us all received a pre-printed response from Malcolm Holmes saying, we've received your letter, but we've got other priorities at the moment, so take a ticket, get in the queue.
I mean, I live up in Brisbane, and I know a fair few Lions supporters, and none of them like the paddle pop line. It's really they just deride it from the stands.
Look, it was part of that 2010 campaign where they brought in Favola, and it was all about trying to fend off the imminent threat of the Gold Coast. So they thought they had to play finals, they had to be successful, they had to get members because it was all going pear-shaped. And it's turned out to be one of the biggest marketing, for want of a bit of it, stuff-ups in the history of AFL footy.
Wasn't it?
But I mean, what are you trying to do when you change your logo, or as an organisation, or anyone, you change your logo when you want to separate yourself from the past? And this sort of change of the logo it was a half and half thing, because they had the back half of the original line and then there's the stupid head on it, and it seemed like a half-assed sort of attempt to change the image and the logo and separate themselves from whatever past they thought they had to separate themselves from, or they just didn't think about it.
Well, who knows? Because we've never been given an answer as to why, but certainly. For Victorian-based supporters, it was seen as a bit of a dagger, and that's why the Fitzroy Footy Club took up, legal action to have that restored, and it's just unnecessary. I mean, why drive a wedge amongst your supporter group when you're already struggling to keep them on board?
And you would think that consultation would have brought all these things to light, and someone at the club saying.
Yeah,
Let's test this out. Let's find this out and get the crowd, get the supporters' reaction and that sort of thing. And I would have found out immediately that nobody liked it.
Yeah, look, they suggest that they held focus groups, but obviously it was with a couple of cats and dogs,
kindergarten kids or something. Oh, I like the lion. That looks lovely.
Wasn't the lion, like the actual logo? Wasn't that part of the deal and like the deed of arrangement in the first place?
Yeah, but I don't know how much you guys know about the deed of arrangement. Brisbane actually drafted the deed of arrangement, so Fitzroy had absolutely no input into that. And the agreement was that it would be the Fitzroy line in perpetuity. Now, that's why Fitzroy took them to the Supreme Court or whatever they did. And then they'd go back and said, Fitzroy at one stage were called the Gorillas, and the lines changed over time. So, we got into semantics and bullshit, really. It was just a waste of time.
So what's the relationship like between the Fitzroy Football Club and Brisbane now?
Nah, pretty average.
Yeah.
The Fitzroy Football Club still exists in its own right.
Yep.
If you think it was a merger, go to the Fitzroy board, read Roy Lyon's posts on there. All it was the Brisbane Bears rebranded themselves as the Brisbane Lions. Now, there was some of us that the Fitzroy support basically split in three once Fitzroy were killed off. A third of people, I reckon, joined up with the Lions and were able to put, all the crap that went down to a side and say, look, I can still follow the Lions, even though it's completely different to following Fitzroy. There's a third of people that probably joined other Melbourne-based clubs, and that was predominantly North Melbourne because it was the preferred merger partner of the Fitzroy board at the time. A lot went to Melbourne, and others have sort of been sprinkled everywhere else. And there's probably a third that just said, nah, I'm out of here, and either went back to following Fitzroy as they sort of morphed the Fitzroy Reds, or the University Reds became the Fitzroy Reds, and now they're the Fitzroy Footy Club. So sort of went three ways.
Can I ask you about that? Oh, sorry, Pross, you go.
No, you go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about that final Fitzroy team, the '96 team that had I think it was they were 1-21 for the year, and I was at that
3-0.
that final Melbourne game when they played Richmond at the MCG, and it was a terrible day. That
Yeah.
team had a number of those guys went on and had pretty reasonable AFL careers after that. Do you feel like if they'd been able to hang on for a couple of years, we might have actually seen a pretty decent Fitzroy team?
Look,
They were very young.
Fitzroy always punched above its weight. You know, we had, as you point out, we had some reasonable players in there in the end, but it was the quality that just got, shafted. And I lived, when I was at uni, I lived a couple of doors up from Dyson Hall Lacey, who was the last chairman, and he would come and sort of give me an update on what was going on. And the AFL dead set, I know Chief had something on about lube being required for Essendon. Well, the amount of lube that and rogering that the AFL did to get Fitzroy out was just horrendous. And Roy Lyon's got heaps of detail.
I wrote up a big
That was
thing
off the
about
record. That was off the record.
I wrote up
Would
a
you,
big thing about it.
Sorry, Western Roy Boy, would you have been okay merging with North? Because I know as a North supporter, I would have happily merged with Fitzroy, but I know there are some Fitzroy supporters who feel the deal wasn't fair and so on, and it's a long time and a hell of a lot of late nights into the past, and I can't remember all the detail, but I remember supporting it back when it happened.
Greg Miller basically scuttled it by being a dick.
Yeah.
It was over the line. You were the preferred partners. Everyone was happy campers. Greg Miller probably went a bit hard and put a few board members off. Then Richmond got involved and said, "Oh, hang on, we don't want them to be a super team because you guys were obviously tracking all right at the time."
Yeah.
And so
We won
Greg
the flag
Miller,
that year, if I recall.
correct.
It's part of
Yeah,
the
so
reason
Greg
why
Miller
people
banged
didn't want
the
you
big
to
stuff
Thought
merge.
I'd get that in there.
Yeah.
It wasn't just Richmond that didn't want you guys to merge, though. That mergers can only be approved by 2/3 of the clubs.
Yeah, Richmond were the ones that led the charge against it. And then Brisbane realised the door was still ajar, and they come in with Noel Gordon, and the rest is history. In
He
terms
went
of
on
that,
the footy show that night, didn't he? I remember that.
He did,
Noel
and he
Gordon
was an
went
absolute
and
dick
gloated
about
on
it.
the footy show. That was the second ugliest moment in football before today, as far as I'm concerned.
No, he was an absolute dick about that.
yeah, well, and that's why they cost a lot of Fitzroy people from ever going across to Brisbane, because they couldn't just put up with that.
Just on with that, I'm not sure whether the actual stats back that up, Roy Boy, because if you look at the membership that Brisbane had in '96 to what they had in '97, there's almost a net gain of every Fitzroy member went to Brisbane in '97. Like the numbers almost match up, minus about 1,000, and same with AFL memberships with club support. Brisbane had almost none.
Oh, there you go. So the
across en
AFL
masse.
membership and the Brisbane memberships match up. There you go. I'm astounded to hear that those would subsequently match up. I find that astounding.
Yeah, look, I'd be pretty confident in my stats in terms of people splitting. I suppose I'm talking not only members, I'm talking supporters.
Well,
There's a lot of North supporters I know who, well, not a lot, but I know enough. There's some on the North board. Horace, for example, who's a well-liked and fairly prominent poster. He was an ex-Fitzroy bloke. I've met him. There's a few ex-Fitzroy people, some for other clubs you see around, but a lot for North. So I'd certainly support your hypothesis, Western Roy Boy.
All right, any other questions for Western Roy Boy on this?
Well, there's a few stories going around about Lee Matthews being part of the ticket to take over the board, and along with that, some talk about Mick Conlon coming into the club, and whether that would entice perhaps entice Paul Roos, being an old Roy Boy himself. It just seems like if all that happened, it would create a fair bit of excitement around the club.
Yeah, look, it would, but I suppose our current CEO is a Kiwi whose background is running a rugby team, and then he ran a race course. Call me stupid, but it's not the ideal background of a CEO you want running an AFL team in what you'd call a non-traditional market. So, take away the problems we've got with the board. We've got a CEO who's got no idea, and the mail coming out of the CEO's conference down at Creswick 2 weeks ago was, what is this bloke on? Because, his measures of success were so far away from everyone else. And that's when, the word started getting out that, Brisbane's in a lot of trouble. So Mickey Conlon is currently the CEO of AFL Queensland. He's not the most popular bloke in the world up there at the moment because they're changing the northeastern AFL conference up there, and they're shafting a few of the traditional clubs, and the old QAFL is being shafted like the VFA, the VFL, the Sandful, and the Waffle. So he's not flavour of the month, but he's got to have more clues than the bloke we've got at the moment.
All right, just getting back to the on-field stuff for Brisbane before we finish up. Who's coming through? Who you got coming through that gives you some real hope for next year?
Oh, look, I think all of the young blokes that have started this year. I mean, Mays, looks like a player. Clark hurt his shoulder, but he looks okay. Doherty, Yo. I mean, all of their drafting for the last couple of years. Rob Kerr, I think, is a pretty astute drafter. And, everyone that they've drafted has been or looks around the mark. Karnesis wants to come home. That's a given. Polak, we've got high hopes for. So I don't think they've had too many misses. Billy Longer looks like he'll be a real good ruckman. His issue will be, can he get a shot at it with Leuenberger being as dominant as he is? But it's all positive on the young bloke front. Our issue going forward will be key position forwards because I'm pretty sure Brownie's stuffed, and we've got Stefan Martin and Jordan Lyle, and Cornelius will be delisted. So we've really got some holes there. Our best hope would be to try and pinch one of the excess lads out of the Gold Coast, and get him to come our way, or maybe Jesse White or someone like that.
You miss out on a chance to give Blackie a farewell game.
Look,
at the Gabba, sorry.
Yeah, look, my highlight of I didn't put a highlight, but the highlight for me last week was Black put a handball in traffic to Mays in space, who just went bang and nailed it. And Black, Voss is obviously the ultimate Brisbane champion, but you go a long way to see a better player or more team-orientated player than Simon Black. I'll be camping outside of Skilled Stadium in the hope that he gets up for that last game. I just want to say thank you one more time. It's been an absolute pleasure to watch him play over 15 years, and it's a sad day when he won't go around for us again.
So what are you looking forward to this weekend, guys? And we'll start with Chief.
Well, I'm really looking forward to Geelong and Sydney. I think that'll be a cracker of a game. See how we do. And then, same day, Carlton Essendon. I mean, shit, forget all the other games. Nothing else is happening on the weekend. Those two games. Although Brisbane and Western Bulldogs will... Yeah, no.
No. Messenger, what are you looking forward to, mate?
Well...
Hang on a minute. Did Chief just give us a football-related thing?
He did actually,
yeah.
What the hell is going on there? All right, Messenger, what do you got?
Hell yeah, N-word.
N-word. There's not much. He's picked the eyes out of it as Chief. It's pretty great stuff there. Look,
no love for the North Hawks game?
St Kilda and Gold Coast. It's really, that Sunday's looking like a terrible list of games.
Isn't it?
Be interested to see if Brisbane can hold the Bulldogs off. The Bulldogs, who so valiantly have now proven themselves to be great finalists after beating Carlton.
No love for the North Hawks game, Messenger?
He won't be going. It's at Etihad.
Yeah, it's true.
It's too far away. I don't know where it is.
And Jamie, your highlight coming up from the weekend?
As a Victorian supporter, people think I'm trolling, and I would never do such a thing. But I would be very interested to see the Freo Port game. Yep. I think that we'll find out where Port are with that one, and Freo could be given a bit of a fright, I reckon. I'm interested to see Port's run and gun against Ross Lyon's boring ball.
That's Subiaco.
Yeah. That's going to be a terrible game. Don't lie. That is going to be an awful football game.
It is going to be an awful game. Western Roy boys, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the obviously the Lions Bulldogs return clash. They gave us a touch up in round one and probably contributed to where Michael Voss is sitting at the moment more than any other team. So I'll be looking to see how our blokes respond to that.
Okay, Old Dark Navies.
It has to be Carlton Essendon on Saturday night. Wondering where Essendon's mind will be at. I mean, they are probably going to play finals because everything's been put on hold. Well, I mean, as far as we know, then they're not going to reach a decision. So we'll see what they negotiate. But and meanwhile, Freo and Port have been played at the same time, so that means a lot to Carlton's slender finals chances. So I guess everybody at each game will be keeping an eye on the scoreboards.
Could set up a very big round 23. I'm looking forward to the Carlton Essendon Fremantle Port double there.
No love for Adelaide Melbourne?
No. No, sadly. Or GWS and Richmond, or St Kilda. St Kilda and Gold Coast is potentially interesting. Just see if Gold Coast can get another win under the belt before the season ends.
They'll win that. St
So-
Kilda
Yeah,
are
they're rolling.
absolutely, they are dreadful. They are absolutely hopeless.
Well, if they want to part with Rewalt, we'll take him at Carlton.
Surely it'll be abandoned ship by the end of that.
Anyway, guys, thank you very much for coming on tonight. If you're listening and you've got this far, there are other podcasts you can have a listen to. You can find them listed on the Bigfooty website on the right-hand side. For the rest of you, thank you very much for coming on. And we will be having an extra tonight, which will be looking at the Essendon stuff in detail. So just stick around for that. In the meantime, good night, Chief.
Good night.
Good night, Messenger.
Night, everybody.
Good night, ODN.
Thanks for having me.
And good night, Jamie.
Night.
Good night, Prosecutor.
Good night, all.
Good night, and thanks very much for coming on, Western Roy Boys, and talking about Fitzroy and Brisbane and all that's going on there for us.
Thank you and good night.
All right, and good night from me, and we'll see you all on the forums.